Hello and welcome to another episode of the Western Bulldogs podcast, Barclay Street, with your hosts, Robert Murphy and Weston Wood, aka Easton Wood. Easton, how are you, my friend? What's happening?
Going very well, mate. Going very well. Happy to be back and fit this weekend. I'm going to be having a run around. So it's just happy.
Kick at the footy ball, are you?
I'm going to do my job, Toja. I'm going to do my job.
That'll be nice. How are the strings? How are Laverne and Shirley?
Laverne's made a great comeback. He, she, I assume he. I don't know. Both she. Why she?
Both she.
Why?
Because she was a woman. Well, Laverne is a person.
I know, but it's my anyway. All right, we're off track. But no, Laverne has recovered really well. And if there was a game, if we didn't have the bye last week, I would have played a game last week. So, who's Laverne anyway? Who are these people?
Yeah,
where'd you get these names from?
Mate, it's your job now to do a bit of homework.
No, it's not.
Show some
You
appreciation.
You ran a segment. Let's name Easton's hamstrings. You put two names forward and then ignored every single suggestion and been running with it since week one.
I don't have to do all the work, mate. You can look it up, Google it on your smartphone. That's not what you said in the meetings when we were talking about doing a podcast.
Check
out Milwaukee's finest sitcom of the 1980s, Laverne and Shirley, the lovable factory workers from Milwaukee.
Yeah,
so in the ever-changing world and landscape at the moment with COVID and lockdowns and all of that stuff, what's the last week been like at the footy club? You had the bye, but I understand you and the players and stuff didn't take the time off over the bye. You trained through, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we were originally going to have, I think it was probably Tuesday to Friday off. And planned getaways and that kind of thing. But obviously with the lockdown in Melbourne and the inability to go probably interstate, that threw a lot of plans into a bit of chaos, which is pretty regular with old COVID. So the club decided that we'd train through that period and aim to take our time off the back of this Geelong game. We're looking to take, I think, the Saturday to Tuesday off after this, so we still get a little break. It was just nice to have the whole crew back, because they'd obviously been in Sydney and in Perth for a little period, and not often that the group separates. So it was nice to have them back, and have everyone back together and training. Yeah.
How's the prospect of getting some crowd Friday night for the boys that are taking on the Cats? I imagine it's a bit more attractive than an empty stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite an odd thing playing in front of no crowd, particularly with such high stakes games like this game is, as was the Melbourne game.
Melbourne one, yeah.
Yeah, so you really, without a crowd, you just don't get the gravity of moments at times, or the roll on of momentum with the energy that the crowd is so great at providing. So it'll be great to have some cheering there on Friday night, that's for sure.
Yeah. Hey, the football world is so we're recording this on the Thursday, and there's a big tribunal case tonight, David McKay, for his hit on Hunter Clark. Is that something that the players have been talking about? Are you sort of keeping an eye on it to see what sort of happens? Do you think it'll be a seminal moment in the game, or do you think it's just a little bit overblown?
I think it will be a pretty big moment, I suppose. There's so much discussion around how the reviews are done and made, and this is a big test. I mean, I think it will make waves of which way they kind of go with it. What
do you think will happen? Do you think you'll get weeks?
I most likely just judged on previous stuff. I think with the AFL's desire to protect the head and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That I feel like if they didn't, then I don't know what would happen after that. What do you think is going to happen? You'd be more across it than I am.
I mean,
What do you want to happen?
Been talking about a lot. No, and listening to it a lot. I've found myself. I've watched it probably 25 times, and almost gotten myself to the point where I think I am David McKay, and I'm not. Is it? I don't know if has he made a second decision. I think it's just so hard. You know as well as anyone how difficult that moment is to leave your opponent, and then the coaching is to impact the contest, and it's the most difficult decision just about in footy before this tribunal case.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of sympathy for. Of course we have a lot of sympathy for Hunter Clark. That's a given. It's a terrible injury, and he was so brave the way he attacked the ball. But I do have sympathy for David McKay as well. So I find myself just leaning towards no suspension because I just think it's too. I think he made one decision, and then it was just the circumstances of the game, and it was an accident.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how the
with that. Yeah, I think it's so hard to make a decision because you're making a play, and there's obviously no malice in what David's decision is. That's where I find it. Yeah, it's hard to swallow if there is a suspension in terms of as a player. If you're going out there and you're playing by what you assume the rules to be, how you could just get into a scenario and bang, all of a sudden you're sitting on the sidelines for a few weeks. It's unfortunately at times it's a dangerous game. Bad things. It's a collision sport, and bad injuries happen.
Yeah. Anyway, there'll be a lot of eyeballs on it. Hey, we've come out of lockdown. We're in the middle of winter. I thought this week, what we could do with we could do with a bit of a laugh.
Oh, so you bring in a comedy routine, Bobo.
Yeah,
got some jokes for us.
Well, as good as that might be, as it's given me an idea. Maybe
I'd enjoy it either way, particularly if you bombed hard.
I know you would. No, I've decided this week we should bring in a professional.
Smart.
And we're going to put him through the ringer. So I will preface it by just giving a parental warning that our next guest is a Geelong supporter. We are playing the Cats this week, but he's a mate of ours, mate of the show, and that's Dave Thornton, who's a ripper. So why don't we take a quick break, and then after that we'll bring in Geelong's finest, Dave Thornton, and we'll put him through his paces. Welcome back to the Western Bulldogs podcast, Barclay Street, Easton. I feel like we're rolling out a lot of special edition episodes.
Every week's a special edition, Bobo.
Well, this one's a little bit extra special. So we've got a very special guest. Dave Thornton is a comedian. Hooray! He's a Cats fan. Boo! He's an Uncle Toby's ambassador. We're all going to pay the bills. He's a Brunswick hipster. He wears number 44 on his back as a tribute to Boris Enright and Tom Stewart, but he's number one in your hearts. Dave Thornton, welcome to the Western Bulldogs podcast, Barclay Street, my friend.
My God, what an introduction. That was you.
That's all I've got.
It does make me laugh now because I did some ads for Uncle Toby's, which is good to know they're getting another plug on a podcast. But I remember I was on Nova and Sam Pagg said to me, it looks like you're in bed with big oats. I said, that's one way to put it.
Oh, hello. A bit fruity for morning radio. I'm in bed with big oats. How are you, man? Before we get stuck into it, how are you feeling about the game, Cats v Dogs, on Friday night?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's down at GMHBA, so that makes it feel a little bit better. I don't know does the AFL do that just to save money on the V line? What does it do? You guys are the closest team to us.
I don't know. I just like hearing V line get a mention. Takes me back. It really does take me back.
Easton, from the Footscray station, I don't think you even need a tap on. You could run the gauntlet, mate, and see how you go. You might lose a couple of players, the ticket inspectors. But
I think that's how most from Footscray do it, mate.
I think it's really sweet that you'd think that a league footballer like Easton would catch public transport. It's really
hold on,
really
hold on.
Dave.
Now listen,
really.
Listen, you can't be throwing out these darts. Yes, you were recently riding the V line, as you might say, but you've really sold your soul with that BMW sponsorship, mate, haven't you? You really changed your spots.
I refuse to take questions or be interrogated about my involvement with BMW Berwick and the good people down at BMW Berwick and the fine automobiles that they are. I like to eat my Uncle Toby's oats in the front seat while parked under the garage before work. So
we might be on Zoom, but I can smell the pong from here, Bubbo. That stinks.
I might just give myself a little quick uppercut after that. Hey, before we get stuck into the structure of today's show, Dave, the Bulldogs have a tradition, and Easton very much a part of that, of course, being a current player, where a player will stand up and tell a joke before training. And Easton had his chance earlier in the year and went for a you tell Dave what you went with, Easton, and see if he approves as a professional lol man.
Here we go.
Well, Dave, the first thing you need to know, and it probably comes as no shock to you, that I'm not funny. So just getting up in front of the group.
I know, Dave. Quite shocking.
Bombshell.
Mate, this doesn't need context. Come on, mate. Let's go. Let's deliver.
So what I've done, so we've got this joke book, and every week we read a joke out, and it had fallen quite flat. So I thought, you know what, I'll take it upon myself to see if I can raise the bar here. And no better to do that. The boys weren't expecting it. So I thought I'll just go for the long joke. And the longer it goes, building the tension, and ultimately for no payoff for where the boys think, when's this going to end? And as you would expect, I get to the punchline 15 minutes later, absolute crickets. Absolute
15
crickets.
minutes.
And I've been hearing about it ever since. But look, I did gain some admiration from it for the sheer commitment to it all.
Is this a thing that football clubs do, where they read out jokes from a joke book? Is this?
Well, I guess that's what we've
like
done.
What we do at the Bulldogs, mate. Sorry, what did Geelong do? They do some sort of
do their own stand-up
Shakespearean
routine.
sort of readings, do they? Hey? Hey?
Yeah. You know what Geelong's like. You know what our reputation's like, mate. It's nothing but Ivy League scholars down that way. It just made me think, because Port Adelaide, they'd have to read out the joke books from Koshy's joke book, and they wouldn't even want to. They're just like, oh, he's here now. All right, let's do it, boys. Let's rip a couple out. And you know you've got to react. Let's go.
Hey, Dave, we had Bulldog ruckman Steph Martin on earlier in the year, and we were sort of talking about this joke thing. When he was up at Brisbane, Chris Fagan in his first year, thought it'd be a good idea to get a random player down to do it. Was it like just talk for a minute on something?
Talk for a minute on no topic.
Just
it was
anything.
Just you had to be able to fill space for 1 minute, and Steph was the first cab off the rank because he thought. I think Fakes thought, Steph, really clever guy, pretty funny at times. He thought this will be good. This will be a great way to start it off.
Right.
Had a complete meltdown. Couldn't talk. Couldn't
say a word.
Didn't say. He said he had a complete internal meltdown, and then that was it. I mean, okay, we won't be doing that anymore.
It's slightly daunting when you need the doctor to come in for a concussion test just while it's a meeting.
Non-contact concussion.
It's just no good. One of my favorite stories of a comedian kind of getting hosed was Mike Wilmot. Probably people my age might remember him. Easton, you're probably a bit young for Mike Wilmot. He's a Canadian guy who used to come out here during the comedy festival, and he plies his trade in London. And he's very blue, very funny, but very blue. And this guy saw him at a gig and said, "Oh, you'd be perfect for a work do I've got on." And Mike's really gruff. Like, he doesn't drink anymore for his health, but he still chain smokes. And he's like, I don't change my act. That's what I do. That's what I do. And the guy's like, yeah, perfect. So 2 PM, he takes a train an hour and a half out of London to this quaint little town. And it's a councilman's meeting, not a town meeting, but yeah. And Mike's like, what am I doing here? Okay. And then they're like, here's the comic stylings of Mike Wilmot. He gets up and just bombs because he's blue, and everyone's like, why is this guy being invited here? And he gets off after 20 minutes of death. Like, not just silence, but people gasping and going, why is this happening? He gets off and says to the guy, I told you that's what I do. And the guy goes, that's fine. The councilman's actually my boss and I hate him and I'm going to quit next week. So that was perfect.
Oh, my God.
What a setup.
He just set him up to take it, just so that was his farewell. See you, mate.
Oh, my lordy Lord. That is very dark. I'm so glad I wasn't in that room. I can't handle that sort of thing. Ooh. Hey, Dave, what we're going to do, we've got a bit of fun and frivolity for you today. Because, you know, I mean, I feel like I know you pretty well, and I'm sure lots of people out there know you well. But we want to get to know you, you know, a little bit better, and I'm sure Easton does. Easton sees himself as a future comedian. He might want to pick up a few tips along the way.
Got a lot of room to improve.
And, of course, keen observers will notice it's a little nod, a little tip of the hat to an old podcast called Cheap Seats that you and I used to run, where we just explore the player profile. Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah, pour a 40 out for Cheap Seats. 11 episodes of the best, Easton, and then Bob had the temerity to go get a real job. It was a real slap in the face. Not for his mortgage, obviously, and his relationship.
11 episodes of podcasting faulty towers it was. So the player profile, and then so we're going to, because we've got 3 stock questions we ask all the current players. So we're going to ask you similar questions along that vein, and then we're going to extend it out. So just to sort of link you in with the Bulldog locker room, and then we'll do a quick Bulldogs and Geelong Cats trivia quiz. But for the player profile, Eason, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, we've had some great responses to this one, Dave, so I'll be fascinated to see what you've got here. There's been some very visceral reactions to the movie that scared you as a kid. It really sticks with guys. Do you have a movie that scared you as a kid that's really, really hung around?
Yeah, I mean, this does show my age a bit, but The Labyrinth. It was, I got taken to like Pixie Cinemas in Geelong, which was the only indie cinema in Geelong. I went there and I was obviously at an age, I think I was 5 or 6, and my parents were like, oh, let's crack on in.
5 or 6
and it is a very
for a horror
dark film. Yeah.
Have we talked about The Labyrinth before? Have you and I talked about The Labyrinth?
Possibly. I mean, like I remember because there's those animals where their heads come off and they swap heads and things like that. Like that's an alarming thing to grasp as a 5-year-old.
I remember when David Bowie died, 2 years ago, and they flashed up the photos of him from The Labyrinth, and I had that post-traumatic stress thing where I was like, no, I don't, nope. Really, like, oh, no, I've seen that. I don't want to go back there. I was like, oh, dear, I've buried that deep. Very, very deep.
I mean,
Nope.
David Bowie's just codpiece alone is enough to scare a small child. It is frightening. He's just got a pair of tights on and a very big bulge.
Did you make it through the film, or did you exit? Did you sprint out of the cinema? What happened? Do you remember?
I mean, this was the 80s, simpler times. You know, I reckon it was probably 90 minutes in when my mum looked across and went, oh, that child is scared stiff. Like,
right.
You know, Mum didn't care. She's probably a couple of West Coast coolers in. She was having a ball at the cinema. She'd let her guard down. I was just absolutely frozen there. I remember looking at it. And, I mean, we got through the film. It proves from an early age I was just a fan of narrative. I'm like, I need closure here, guys. But I think it was through gritted teeth.
Right. Question 2, Dave. Is there an AFL player that lives in your neighbourhood?
Ooh.
Or a former AFL player? Is there?
It's funny you said that. And look, we used to get celebrity drop-ins from Bob Murphy. Then he realised it's a lot of petrol in the Merc to be driving across here. I don't know if I'm going to keep this up, but
BMW.
Even better.
BMW. Berwick BMW.
Is it? Oh, okay. Just lost to a sponsor. Okay. As long as you guys don't mention Kellogg's too, because it's really going to hurt my brand. Yes, well, next door, and probably right now next door, is ex-Carlton player Nick Deegan, who I'm going to remember. You guys can refresh the year because I'm not a Blues fan, but it was the year that Essendon made the finals, but obviously because of the PED saga, they didn't make it, and they played Richmond. If you remember, Carlton came 9th, then got to the finals, played Richmond. And it was Dykes who was initially emergency and then got put on the field. And I think he kicked 4 or 5 on that day to beat Richmond. and he's in Carlton
win.
folklore. Like when I bring it up with Carlton fans, like, oh yeah, Nick Deegan, I know him. And I think he played 60, 70 games, something like that for the Blues.
Good ones too. He was a good pickup.
Mate, he was great. He told me that Mick Malthouse used to call him Mickey Milkshakes. And I said, why? And he goes, he just like milkshakes. And I'm like, but that's quite a funny nickname just to call Mick Malthouse.
I love that.
Gotta love that. A bit of alliteration. It rolls off the tongue, makes it even better.
Right, you're up next.
I reckon it'd take the teeth out of two if he's yelling at you. And if he's giving you a sprain, you're like, oh, Mickey Milkshakes has gone off again.
Oh, milkshake.
Look at him go. All right, moving on to the next one. We've got Last Dance was a massive hit. We're big fans of all sports here on Barclay Street. So we're wondering, take Michael Jordan out of it. Was there a character that fascinated you the most out of The Last Dance?
Oh, good question. Because The Last Dance, what a documentary. That was, if not during lockdown, it was during the heavy-ish lockdown, especially in Melbourne. It was the one thing that kept me going.
Yeah, it was a deep one. It was the deep lockdown.
Yeah, I've got a tearaway jacket actually in the wardrobe behind me, from the actual early 90s Chicago Bulls that I wore with pride for about a week until it looked like I needed a carer. People were like, what is he doing, that guy? Is he right? Is he right in the head? But other than Michael Jordan in that doco, I mean, Dennis Rodman is great, but I did see there's another doco on ESPN about Rodman, and it was basically the same thing. I do find Steve Kerr quite fascinating. I find him a man just because he's been in the thick of it in NBA for so long. And I think anyone who can articulate, what's happening around them, not to judge sportsmen, most sports people are across it. I'm just saying if you are...
we just want to be hard to beat, mate. We just want to be hard to beat.
Just 1 week at a time, mate. Just 1 week at a time.
Role,
just like
mate.
to thank my teammates.
Play our role.
Couldn't do it without them. Just, yeah.
We're an anywhere, anytime team.
I find Steve Kerr a very fascinating guy.
Right, question 4, Dave. Have you ever illegally run onto an AFL ground?
Oh, I would say no. Honestly, I would say no.
Soft.
Loser.
I think too that the times I'd come up to Melbourne, like the MCG and things, it's too intimidating, especially as a kid. Like it was too much. I'm trying to think if I ran out to your park, but I reckon back in the day, I don't think it was illegal.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
That's how old I am now, Easton.
Yeah, that's very
it's
good.
hard to argue that.
Like it was back in the day, they were like, nah, if you want to get some secateurs and help out in the ground, that'd be great. I haven't done the edging. Go for it, mate. I don't care.
I actually ran out on the ground one day. I was at the game. I would have been only a real young fella when Matty Lloyd kicked his 100th. I think that was back in 2000. So I must have only been 10 years old. But everybody ran to Matthew Lloyd and absolutely swarmed him. So I got out on the ground late and I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to see him. So they were playing North Melbourne. I thought I'll run over and see the North Melbourne players because there was no one surrounding them. No one was giving a stuff about what was going on over there. But I remember I ran over there and I stood probably a metre away from Spider Burton and just had a look up. And I remember just being totally in awe of just like, this guy's 3 times my size. What is that? How do you do that? And that just stuck with me as a kid. I'll never forget that.
They're so huge, aren't they? This is honestly being in Fremantle. I was doing a gig in Fremantle, went to a bar and someone said, there's Sandilands over there. So this was probably, 10 years ago. And I was like, oh yeah, he's not that big. And it was like something out of The Naked Gun, where it's like, oh, he's not that tall. And then he stood up and you're like, oh my God. It was comical. I'm like, this man, because it's all to scale as well. That's the thing that freaks me out. He's just a human that someone's just gone on Photoshop and just gone, yeah, we'll do 250%, thanks. Like nothing looks out of proportion. Right. Strange.
Yeah. Love big people. Really good.
Other things we love on Barclay Street here, Bobo, is the haircuts. Now we're wondering, Dave, what's your all-time favourite Geelong player haircut?
I mean, there's been some great ones through the years. Peter Riccardi had a very soul glow like mullet.
So, are you talking early days Riccardi? Because it got tidier as he sort of went. He never completely said goodbye, but early days was quite. Yeah, early days was glorious.
Yeah. I mean, having watched the front bar last couple of weeks, I do forget about some of the scullets where Billy Brownless and, Gary Ablett, where the mullet's still happening, but you're like, there's so much thinning on top. Like, I love it in the 80s, they were just like, no, you can still grow it out the back. Like, it's not going to affect anything. It's fine if I don't have a fringe at all. But Robert Scott, Geelong, and then moved on to North Melbourne. I used to love him, I think, because in 1990, when I was about 10 years old, Easton, I was a fan of, you may have heard of Vanilla Ice. And Robert Scott had the exact same quiff. When everyone else was doing mullets, he was ahead of his time.
It was a very levelled off flat top Robert Scott. I always had a lot of respect for that. Yeah. Hey, Dave, last one of the player profile, and then we'll rip into a bit of trivia.
You're like a fully grown creator, Daniel.
Yeah. In the 90s, when Channel 7 had the football rights, and Drew Morfitt would ask the audience if they didn't want to know the scores that they should look away now. Did you ever sneak a peek? Yeah,
I did. Because it was like, don't you think, when you look away now and you're like, I could. This feels seductive almost. Like, don't touch that button. Well, now I just want to touch the button.
Yeah, it's as old as the Bible, that. Don't eat the apple. Do whatever you want, but don't eat the apple. It's like, I didn't feel like an apple until now.
I know. Geez, Drew Morfitt, what a great that time stamps it as well. When you say Drew Morfitt, it brings back so many great memories.
Do you remember the song that they used to always sort of play in that moment? They were saying, if you don't want to know the scores, look away now. It was always, do you know the song?
Well, now I'm getting confused because I remembered Wide World of Sports on Channel 9, which is a similar thing. So now I can feel a mashup in my head. Which song was it?
It was Right on the Tip of My Tongue, Johnny Diesel.
I wonder if he made some sweet scratch out of that.
AKA Mark Lazotte. So, well, that was very good, Dave. I'm very impressed by that. A very nice player profile. Now comes the tough stuff, though. So we've talked early.
Before we do, and I don't want to put a handbrake on what was happening before, but because Ethan, we have just commented this year talking about haircuts, because I know I just rattled off a couple I know. It is a broad church this season in the AFL. There are some rude haircuts. Some guys who have stuck to just classic, short around the sides, bit of volume on top. But some of the kids coming through, is there any commentary on, some of the young kids and those very rude mullets that are coming through?
The mullets really got out of control. It's really grown legs and really taken off. And we've got some serious contenders here. Baz's mullet is just, it's gone through many phases. At the start, it was like, this is a bit dirty. And now it's come through so long. You can't but admire it. It's just a thing of beauty, the way that it flaps out the back. And Aaron Norton's volume in his mullet, he looks like a groodle. It's like a groodle bouncing up and down. It's so voluminous. There's the new generation have really taken that and run with it. That's for sure.
There's that mullet. There's the well manicured, but the ones that are just like, I'm just going to cut hard into the sideburns here, and that's something. It's like, that was funny for a bit. I reckon I knew it was over when big Scotty Lysett from Port Adelaide was rocking it, and I was like, I think it might be over, fellas. I think it might be done.
Yeah, the heavy shave on the side does look like you've just had a lobotomy. Like there were just wires hanging off your temple and you've just escaped from the mental asylum. Like it does. Yeah. A bit rough.
It really does. Righto. Question 1, Dave.
Yep.
In a fight to the death, who would win? A mangy, hungry little kitten or a big, strong, robust bulldog in a cage? Who would win in a fight? A little cat, little mangy little cat. Meow. Big, strong, hungry bulldog.
I feel like this is loaded. Well, the only thing is, because bulldogs are obviously so inbred and they've got a lot of problem with their jowls. That's a lot of breeders have told me. So they have a lot of infections and things like that. And so when they're left to their own devices, these poor bulldogs don't know how to put themselves together. A mangy feral cat has survived and will continue to survive. Actually, researchers have shown that through nuclear fallout, there'll be nothing left. But cat. BT still doing roaming commentary. cockroaches and feral cats. That's a fact. So I'm going with the feral cat, mate.
Unfortunately,
he's wriggled out of that one pretty well, Bobbo.
Yeah, look, I'm as impressed as you are, Ethan. Unfortunately, the answer was B. A strong, hungry bulldog beats the cat every time.
There was ever any idea that maybe my profile might go up through this podcast, the complete opposite is happening. I'm going to get eviscerated by Western Bulldogs fans after this goes out.
At least you know what you're in store for, mate. At least you know.
It's true, Easton. True.
All right, number 2, we've got Bartel or Gene Syracusa. Who's the most handsome?
Oh, this is tough. Like that last question, fine, I could get through it, but the temperature in the room's just going up. I'm not going to lie.
My glasses are fogged up.
Jeez. I'm so glad the wife and the kids are at God, what a dreamboat. Who wouldn't want to be the meat in that sandwich? I got to be honest. I know, like Jimmy Bartel, don't get me wrong, those dreamy blue eyes, but John, like I only saw him. This actually does sound creepy. I saw him at a bar across the room, which makes it sound even creepier. And I was like, geez, he's still a good-looking man.
It's a Tinder date. It's extraordinary.
I mean, the salt and pepper has even set him off even better. It's ridiculous.
The silver fox.
The next thing you're about to say, you went up and started sniffing his hair. I don't even know what the answer to that question was, but I feel like just giving you a tick just for the detail and creepiness.
We'll take Gene Syracusa. We'll take that. We'll accept it.
I said to the bartender, don't watch that class, mate. I'll just what you want for it.
Righto, question 3. When Billy Brownless broke Bulldog hearts in the qualifying final after the siren in 1994, Sandy Roberts has an iconic line. What is it?
Oh, yes. Billy, you're the king of Geelong. Billy,
yes. Well done.
You can see it in your mind's eye simply because I think they played it on the footy show God knows how many times.
Yeah.
I think it's unbelievable.
I think for a bonus point, I think it's Jared Healy that says the monkey's off the back, Billy, as a sort of as an add-on there. But well done, Dave. Full points. Question 4, over to you, East.
All right, then. Were Cats flags 07, 09 and 11 better than the Dogs in 2016?
Oh, look, 07 was amazing. I remembered a friend of mine talking about the V-line. A friend of mine said, because I was in Melbourne, he said, take the V-line down to Geelong. It's going crazy. And then I remembered watching the news. It was footage of this guy dancing on top of the roof of a Commodore with his undies were still on, but his pants were dropped around his ankles, which I just thought was very funny for like a man who's trying to celebrate and not knowing what to do. Just drop trow and stick them around your ankles. Woo, 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 we won. Your win was incredible because my child, my eldest, was 2 weeks old. And that was my first day out since having a kid, since becoming a father. So I went and watched it, and I was highly emotional because I hadn't slept for about 2 weeks, Easton. And even the game to get into that against GWS, I was going nuts. I was on the couch. It was great. But I'd still have to say 07 would be, look, for everyone else, it was a boring game. But for us, oh, good Lord, it was fun.
Well, no surprises here, mate. It's a Bulldogs podcast, so that's incorrect. The answer was 2016.
And not even ambiguous, not even any reasoning. It's just that's wrong answer.
Yeah, you're an idiot. It's science. Shut up. See you later.
Dave Thornton, question 5. What's the most marks Derek Hall for the Geelong Cats took in a single season?
Oh God,
you know this. Every fair income Cats fan would know this. Yeah, I didn't even have to look it up. Not even a Cats fan. Didn't
you? Because for me, I don't really know who Derek Hall is. So this is
makes two of us.
I was like, I'm not even going to try to work my way through this one. In a season, did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, what do we got? Jeez, I don't know. Can you at least tell me what era Derek Hall played in?
It was mid-90s.
Okay. I'm Christ. 15. Who knows?
Slightly more than that. 144 in 1996, Derek Hall. Underrated man above his head. Anyway, so shout out to you, Derek.
Jesus,
you're out there listening.
Wow, that was me in year 11. I think after we lost to Carlton, I really stopped watching.
Yeah, you sort of checked out for a bit. Yeah, that's when Derek was doing his stuff post-95. Yeah. All right, this is your final question. Easton, over to you.
Here we go. We've got in the 90s. So you were still at high school here, weren't you? And we've got, what was the actual name of Gary Ablett Senior's hairstyle? I feel like you'll be all over this.
Yes. I feel like you might have even mentioned it. This is quite extraordinary.
It's got to be the skullet. It has to be.
Ding, 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 ding. Correct. Yes. What a name for a dude.
It really is. I mean, you know, we live in a world now where we're aware of, you know, the privilege and the patriarchy. And you're like, men could walk around with that haircut and no one went, hey, this is rude. This is going to affect children. This is going to affect, you can't have pregnant women around that haircut. It is not right.
Is it born out of just being lazy? Like it obviously doesn't grow on the top and he thought, you know what, I'm not cutting the back. I'm not cutting it at all. I'm just letting it all hang out.
I think you're being a bit kind. I think you're being a bit kind, Easton. I think I'm not bald, you're bald. I've got long hair.
Has anyone ever done the skullet and tried to comb it from the back over the front? Because we've had the side combs. Has anyone done a back comb?
I don't know.
Turned it into a fringe.
On the back.
Yes, mullet into a frullet.
Yeah, frullet. That's it. Yesterday, being here in Brunswick, because you know it's the gentrified suburb. You go past every second factory, and you're like, "All right, panel beaters or CrossFit? Let's see what this one is." And I went past old school mechanic, and he went out the front to look at a car, completely bald, like just around the sides, but with a ponytail. And I was like, yes, that's real good. Like you're completely just all off the top, but you've grown a ponytail just out the back of your neck.
I got long hair, mate. I don't know what you're talking about. I got long hair. So
really good. I mean,
someone else.
That's so good. That's so a great haircut.
Hey, Dave, mate, thank you so much. We've got to get you on again because there's never enough time to sit down. We'd love to pick your brain all day. Looking forward to the game on Friday night. It hasn't been a happy hunting ground for the Dogs over the years, but we've got a pretty good side this year, but the Cats are humming along pretty nicely as well. Great to see you. Great to hear your voice. Hopefully comedy's back out there and people can get in to see you and the other comedians around Melbourne. It'd be nice to have some crowds, I'm sure. But we really appreciate you coming on Barclay Street. You're a ripper, mate. You're a beauty.
Thanks for coming, mate. Great to have you.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Yeah, and get out there and support live comedy because unfortunately we couldn't talk our partners into going to interstate bubbles. It just didn't seem to work for stand-up comedy. I said,
comedy hubs.
Hey, babe, can I just apply my trade at the Sunshine Coast for a couple of months and then I'll be back? So, yeah, if you're here in Melbourne, get behind all the live entertainment you can.
Very good. Take care, mate, and go Dogs.